Think quick. Today's episode is about quick responses, but not the way you think. So stick around for Life's Potluck Buffet. I'm John Paulus. Thanks for joining me. Oh, and I guess we'll ask the cards about a quick response, too, to find out what their prompt is for today. So, why am I talking about quick responses? Because quick response is what the Q and the R stand for in QR codes. You know those codes. If you don't, look at the thumbnail today. That's a QR code. And if you have a phone, scan that code, see what happens. QR codes have become immensely popular in the last few years. Why? Well, because they provide a contactless way to pay, to look at information like a restaurant menu, and that's something that's really important in a world where we were trying to minimize contact as much as possible. So really, if you'll remember, there's a kind of wave of QR code stuff back in maybe 2016, as I recall, 2017. And then it kind of faded away a little bit, but then it came back big time for reasons that you know and that I just explained. And so I thought I'd talk a little bit today about the history of the QR code and talk about a few details about why it's, well, such a neat thing. So let me roll it back to the 1960s. So in the U.S., a national organization of food chains, of grocery stores, of supermarkets, wanted to test the possibility of a kind of automated checkout system instead of the, old, you have the price tag on something and the cashier has to put that price into the register and so forth. Very time consuming and something that has been, as we know, sped up just a tremendous amount. And if you have been to a grocery store or any kind of, many kinds of stores recently, and you go to the self-checkout, well, what are you always looking for on the package? You're looking for that Universal Product Code, or UPC, which got developed, actually starting in the 1940s by a couple of people who created a kind of bullseye code. But eventually the lines of the barcode that we're familiar with in Universal Product Code with that particular type of barcode was developed. And once the equipment for scanning it and tracking it and coming up with all sorts of information around the purchases that were going on in these supermarket chains came out, everyone realized that things had changed forever because the sales were up and stayed up, and the return on investment using the barcode was enormous, and every store adopted the barcode in terms of the major chains. And while the Universal Product Code was really handy for labeling a specific product and tracking that product and ringing up that product and so forth, a more flexible type of barcode was wanted in many parts of the world. And in Japan, there was a special demand for it, and a demand that it be able to encode alphanumeric data, but also kanji, which is the Chinese character script that is used in Japan, and kana characters, which is the script that's used to write Japanese. Just like what you would, if you recognize kana characters, then you can look at a package or something and you say, oh, well, this is Japanese, because they are distinctively Japanese characters. So those characters too needed to be encoded in a code. So you could see how this demand for a barcode that could have more information, and like quite a bit of information was needed. And also, what was needed was a technology where this new code could be scanned and recognized. So, a team of couple of people at Denso Wave Incorporated, Japanese company, led by Masahiro Hara, or Hara Masahiro in Japan, uh, developed a new type of barcode that would be able to be read very quickly and also discoverable and could encode a lot of information. And that code is what became called the quick response code, and that's QR code. Oh, yeah. And as Hara was trying to think about, well, how do you encrypt all of this information into a shape? He caught sight of a Go game board with all of the pieces on it in a particular game that was being played, and saw the pattern of the black and white Go game pieces and realized that they were actually encoding a very complex set of information, and that they could be used to encode in that same kind of complex arrangement of black and white tiles that you see in Go games, that those could be used to encode all of the information that he was hoping to have represented. Now, when you're looking at the typical QR code, I think a lot of people would say, "Oh yeah, there are those like 3 or 4 squares." There, a lot of times there's a fourth one. It's kind of, you can't see, can't see it easily, but there are usually 3 really noticeable kind of black and white. Well, initially black and white. Nowadays, you can use any color as long as it's distinguishable from the background. But originally it was black and white. And you notice there's those 3 kind of squares. That's like a square inside a frame inside a frame, or maybe a square inside a square inside a square. Look at a QR code right now, and you'll see something interesting about those squares. If you count the number, just from left to right, if you count the number of black and white squares, you will see that there's 1 black square, then 1 white square, then 3 black squares, then 1 white square, then 1 black square. And when you do this in every direction, in other words, basically 360 degrees as a square, you end up with this thing that looks like a black box with a white frame and inside of a black frame. And there are 3 of them that you'll see that are used to detect that the position of the pattern, and to, well, detect that this is a QR code. See, because the optical scanners needed, and this is what Hara and his colleagues figured out, is that they needed to be distinctive from basically all of the normal pictures and writing and black and white printing that you would see on boxes and business forms and just everywhere. So what they discovered, that the least common ratio between white and black areas on printed materials was 1:1 to 3:1:1, which is why you see in those position detection boxes that pattern, that the pattern of black and white in that is 1:1 to 3:1:1, which is why they form that particular shape and why it looks like it looks like. And so that those are called, in technical terms, fiducial markers, which a fiducial marker when you see anything that's used for scale. So if there's a ruler or a measure in a picture for scale, that's a type of fiducial marker, and these are as well. So those enable the scanners to scan this code from any angle and to pick it up and realize that this is a QR code. So this is very clever technology. And while we're talking about clever technologies, let me draw a card for today's quick response to every question we have. So yellow lemons, blue dumplings, magenta noodles, cards, tell us some things. All right, here we go. Oh, it's card 51. Being a different you teaches you a lot about the regular you. So imagine that you have one new identity, completely different from the ones you have now. You might choose an identity that you wish to know something about. Perhaps it's something you've always imagined yourself doing, but you've never done. So explain what that means about you and what you need to do in your usual work and life in response to that idea. So think about what identity came to mind and what do you think you need to do because that came to mind. So give that a thought today. Give it a scan. Use your mind to scan that idea and see what you come up with. And I'll see you tomorrow on Life's Potluck Buffet.